Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. Thanks for joining us. Um, we're still waiting for a few people to roll in here, but we are going to get started. So today we're going to be talking about how to calculate and set a digital marketing budget. This is great timing. Amazingly, we are approaching Q4 of 2020, so this is a really great time to be thinking about this. In a crazy year, obviously a lot has changed. So as we go through this, let me introduce myself first. My name's Ryan Morgan. I'm the Vice President of Digital Marketing at Aztec. Aztec is a Cleveland-based digital marketing, web design, and web development agency. And today, what we're going to be talking about and what I hope you'll take away from this is, at a very high level, how do you set an overall marketing budget? Talking about the differences between traditional marketing and digital marketing and how you budget between the two. And then getting into some of the nitty-gritty about how you actually go about calculating budgets for things like ad spend, software and platform costs, and even resources, whether those are internal or external. So I would encourage you, if you have any questions, please let me know. We got a comment from Brittany. Does everyone hear? Anyone that is in here, can you just shoot a quick message in here? Let me know that you can hear me. If not, we can do a little bit of troubleshooting real quick. But just want to make sure that I don't get too far here without people mentioning. Okay, so we have people that can hear me. Great. So when we think at a very high level, at a very macro level about setting a marketing budget, there's a lot of different reference points, but a couple of the good ones, you look at the US Small Business Administration, they recommend that organizations set their marketing budget at around 7 to 8% of gross revenue. Gartner conducted a survey of chief marketing officers, and the average that the CMOs said they were allocating towards marketing was around 9.8% of revenue. So just at a very high level as a benchmark, we're typically seeing recommendations for where your overall marketing budget should be between the 5 to 10% revenue range. Now that's certainly going to vary. If you're a smaller company, depending on economic fluctuations, you may be bootstrapping a little bit. You may be beneath that 5% revenue threshold being allocated towards marketing. And vice versa, if you're a growing company, you may see that your allocated marketing budget is higher than 10%. Both of those are normal, but this is really meant to give you kind of a benchmark of where you should or could be at. So let's talk about traditional marketing first. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time here, but typically a marketing budget is allocated between traditional and digital marketing, and these do overlap in certain areas. So when we look at these, and when we're talking about traditional marketing, we're typically talking about things like print, radio, TV, direct mail, sponsorships, events, telemarketing, those kind of things. Now, given the economic situation this year, we're certainly seeing a lot of shifts from traditional marketing to digital marketing. But I'm here to say that traditional marketing can and very well could be an effective part of your overall marketing budget. We're going to talk through how to identify if that's the case or not. So I've put together kind of this tongue-in-cheek traditional marketing decision tree so you can evaluate if the traditional marketing that you are doing or have done in the past is effective, and if you should be planning for that as you think about the next year. So first big question that you should be asking yourself is, can you track your traditional marketing effectively? And can you track its effectiveness? So if the answer is yes, if you have traditional marketing driving people to landing pages on a website, or you're driving people in store and you can calculate the lift based on those methods, or you're using coupons or anything that allows you to track this, great. That's a really important step. Once you're able to track it, you need to identify if it's effective, if it's working. If it is, meaning if you are efficiently and effectively driving people into stores or to your websites, you're driving lead generation, you're increasing sales, whatever those really important business metrics are to you, then great. I would highly consider continuing to make that part of your budget. If you evaluate this and you say, you know what, we've been doing print ads or radio ads or sponsorships every year as part of our digital marketing plan, and it really hasn't returned what we've spent on it, then this is a really great opportunity for you to reevaluate if that should be part of your ad spend or your overall marketing budget in the following year. Now, on the flip side of this, if the answer is no, you can't track if it's successful. If you're running radio ads or print ads or putting billboards up there, running direct mail campaigns, and hoping that they're working and not quite sure if they are or not, this is a great opportunity for you to reach out to those vendors and share this with them and say, hey, I'm not sure if this is really working. Can you give me some sense of the ROI of this? How do you work with your other clients in terms of identifying ROI? And really challenge them to give you more, whether it's data or evidence that your investment is worth it. So this is a really great place to reevaluate when you're thinking about next year's budget, to reevaluate if the things you've been doing are working successfully. You know, when thinking about how much of my budget do I allocate to all of the different things, whether they're traditional or digital, the obvious, very important step that you need to take is understanding where your audience is. Everyone's audience is going to be different, and some audiences, some organizations are just a bit more aligned with traditional marketing methods. Their audience reacts to that. Many organizations, though, are seeing that even every generation has adopted digital today, whether it's email or social media. So there really aren't any generations that haven't adopted this. We're kind of past those days. So really evaluating, where is my audience consuming information, researching information about products and services? Where do they spend their time? Where do they get their entertainment? Those kind of things are really important to consider where you want to start thinking about allocating that budget for the following year. So when we think about, and as an agency, where we've seen organizations shift from traditional marketing to digital marketing is really focused around kind of three key areas. The first one is cost. And what we've seen with traditional marketing is that there are fairly high barriers to entry in many cases. The cost to put up billboards, even the cost to run a series of print ads or radio commercials over a several week or month period of time, often has that barrier of entry where it's not going to cost less than $10,000, for example, to get into that. So it's a really big investment to put out there and hope that it works. Whereas the barriers to entry for digital are significantly lower. You can start digital advertising for as low as $5 or $10 a day. You can scale up or down as you need on the fly. So once you place an order for print ads, they're out there. You can't take it back. But there's a lot more malleability to how you can adjust budgets within digital advertising or digital marketing in general. We talked about the trackability. We use that decision tree. And this is another area where we've seen organizations are frustrated with not knowing the results of their traditional marketing methods. You know, they've always placed print ads, they've always run radio ads, but they don't really know how much that impacts their organization's lead generation or sales. And the ability for digital marketing to really pinpoint and precisely track back what is working based on what channels, what audiences, what messages, what creative, gives you a lot more insight into what is working. And then targeting, again, you know, when I think about traditional marketing, and I think about something like a print ad, for example, that's going out, let's say it's going out to a business publication with a circulation of 30,000 people. As an advertiser, you're hoping that some small subset of those 30,000 people are A, within your target audience, within the personas that you may have built out, and B, are interested and looking for the products or services that you're offering. Now, that's usually, there's going to be a very small percentage of that audience, but you're paying for the whole audience. You're paying for that $30,000 distribution list. Whereas with digital, you have access to an immense amount of information, whether it's demographic, geographic, intent-based searches, things like that, where you can say, I only want to pay for the people that are hyper relevant to my audience and someone that would be looking for the products or services that I offer. So those are some of the really big reasons that we're seeing more people shift their budgets from traditional to digital. This is a reference to a study that Hook Agency did. And they said the digital marketing online part of marketing budgets is expected to be up from 42% in 2019 to around 45% on average by 2020. Now, move that and extrapolate that into 2021 and consider the economic forces that we've seen this year. It's very likely that we're seeing digital be the majority of overall marketing budgets, 50% plus easily. And we often see organizations these days that are shifting either entirely to digital because of the reasons I just mentioned, or they have a heavily weighted digital marketing budget, 80-20, 75-20, 25, something like that. You can just see this shift continuing over time. So let's start talking about some of the nitty gritty here. First, I want to talk about calculating ad spend. And if anyone has any questions as I'm going along, please feel free to ask questions, drop anything in the chat. I'm happy to answer those things as we go along. So when we're talking about calculating ad spend, this is really a subset of that overall marketing budget. And one of the first questions that we often kind of try to identify is, how many channels does an organization or a brand or a company need to be on? Because we typically we like to look at kind of a minimum ad spend per channel for them to be effective in digital advertising. So benchmark, we typically like to recommend investing a minimum of $1,000 per month per channel, just to give you a scope of a benchmark or a starting point. So if you're going to be on Google Ads and YouTube and Facebook, you might be looking at a minimum of $3,000 a month ad spend between those channels. Now, there are caveats to this, which I'll talk about. And let's also take this back a step and help you understand, how do you identify how many ad channels you need to be on? So it really comes down to what you're trying to do and who you're trying to target. If you're building a marketing strategy, or more specifically a digital marketing strategy, and you're looking at targeting people that are searching for very specific keywords, so they're searching for your products or your services, or even at times your brand name or your competitors' brand names, then you might want to use a platform like Google Ads, where you can target people that are searching for these things. They have that intent. Whereas if you're trying to target audiences, so you have identified your target audience or you're using personas, and you're able to really tightly define those, then a platform like Facebook ads or Instagram or LinkedIn ads could be a really great platform to identify. Now, usually there's a pretty good process for identifying which and how many channels you want to be on, but it's important to have a good sense going into the year of where you're going to be focusing and prioritizing. Now, I said that there is, this kind of benchmark where we recommend $1,000 minimum ad spend per month with caveats. So with Google Ads, I do think this is an important kind of minimum or benchmark. But if you are just focusing on a small geographic region, or you're focusing on a singular product or service that you offer, you very well may be able to get away with a lower budget, for example, $500 a month. I think the same goes for Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. If you're targeting a very small audience and you are looking at one singular product or service, again, we often see new advertisers with a lower budget. They can test if it works. And this is good on one side because you don't have to invest a lot of money to start gathering data. But it can also be challenging because the lower you're investing, the slower the data that you're getting back in terms of what's working, what's not working is coming in. So oftentimes lower initial investments just means that it's going to take a longer amount of time to really optimize and hit your stride with effective digital advertising. So here's some things that we use to calculate but also adjust digital advertising budgets throughout the year. So the first thing is we use goals to adjust those budgets. And when I talk about goals, primarily I'm talking about really important business goals. Lead generation and sales are typically the two that we focus on. Visits are okay, but just getting someone to your site doesn't mean that they're going to be a lead or that they're going to purchase something. And impressions, I would say, are at the bottom of my list because just having someone see your ad doesn't mean that they're going to take any kind of action. Now, if you're focusing on more of a branding or awareness campaign, then visits and impressions are really meaningful metrics. But if you're focusing on a campaign focused on business metrics like leads or sales, you want to make sure that you're focusing on those. So let's look at an example. Let's say that you have a goal. You've talked to your sales team or your internal leadership team and you said, you know, we want to use digital advertising to drive 20 new leads per month. That's our goal. And anecdotally, either based on past performance or research or even conversations with an agency or a partner that knows kind of what the average cost per lead for different industries is, you identify that the cost per lead is going to be about $75. So you can kind of work backwards and do this math and say, well, if we want 20 leads, we know they're going to cost $75 per lead, then we want to kind of aim our budget at $1,500 a month. So this is a great way of kind of working backwards to say, well, let's not start with just how much are we going to put into it. Let's start with what we want to get out of it. And then we also use performance, especially on an ongoing basis, to adjust ad budgets as well. So my favorite indicators of performance are cost per lead and ROI. So if you're focusing on lead generation, I want to know how much it costs to generate each lead, hopefully focusing on high quality leads. And I also want to know if we're in any kind of e-commerce or sales situation, how much does it cost me for every dollar that I spend on ads? How many dollars is that returning back? To a lesser degree, click-through rate can be an indicator of performance. But again, just because you're getting more clicks on a certain ad or creative doesn't mean that it's necessarily turning into ultimate business results. So if we look at this, and let's say that historically, we've run some campaigns on Google Ads and Facebook Ads, and we've identified that, all right, over the past couple of months, Google Ads has been generating leads at a cost of $75 per lead. But on Facebook Ads, we've been generating leads at a cost of $45 a lead. And let's assume that the quality of leads between these two channels are consistent. This is a great way to reallocate or consider budgets because you might not want to go into the year saying, let's allocate the exact amount towards Google Ads and Facebook Ads. In this case, you likely want to allocate more towards Facebook Ads because it's giving you a more cost-effective return on your investment. So performance is another thing that we definitely use to really focus on adjusting budgets and identifying how we want to allocate budgets in the next year. So let's talk about one of the other big expense areas, and that is digital marketing software and platforms. And when we're talking about this, we're really talking about all of the investments that you're going to need to make in software to effectively run digital marketing campaigns, programs, and things like that. So I look at this one of two ways. Typically, you can go either the all-in-one route, and if anyone remembers Inspector Gadget, he had every single tool imaginable that he could pull out. And oftentimes he wasn't incredibly effective with all of these, but he had everything at his disposal. Or you can go the a la carte route, which is you can put together your own combinations. You can pick what you want in terms of tools. And this comes with its own unique challenges and benefits as well. So let's talk about some real life examples of what this looks like. On the all-in-one side, and I'm just going to use the example of HubSpot. Full disclosure, we are not a HubSpot partner. HubSpot is a great platform. It has its pros, it has its cons, just like any other platform. But HubSpot is kind of your stereotypical does-it-all digital marketing platform. Now, when we look at the benefits of taking this all-in-one approach in terms of investing in one piece of software that can do everything you need for digital marketing, some of the pros are you have everything in one place. So you don't have to build all these different connections. You don't have to learn a lot of different things. We're putting here less platforms to learn. The learning curve with some of these platforms can be long and tricky. And if you can have your individuals on your team learn one place, it may be more advantageous than having them learn 3, 4, 5 different platforms. And with an all-in-one platform, you don't really need any third-party integrators to connect to other things because everything is all in one ecosystem. The challenges with all-in-one platforms is they can tend to be more expensive than building your own kind of set of software. We'll look at some of the expenses and the costs in a second. What I found and what we found as an agency from our experience is that sometimes these all-in-one platforms that do everything can be kind of a jack of all trades, but a master of none. Now, HubSpot as an example, it has tools, it has a CMS, it has SEO tools, social media tools, all these things. And I think some of them are really great at what they do. Their CRM is really great, really robust. Some of them, I think, aren't as good as tools that are specifically designed to do that thing. So you have to kind of take that with a grain of salt as well. And oftentimes, these all-in-one platforms require a larger commitment, and that typically means paying on at least an annual basis, sometimes 2 years at a time, with no monthly invoicing or any options like that. It also means that when you invest in an all-in-one platform, all your eggs are in one basket. So if you don't like the direction that that organization or platform is going, it can be somewhat hard to remove yourself from all those things because you have all your data in one place. So on the flip side, we have this kind of a la carte model, which is having separate platforms for email, CRM, CMS, analytics, tracking, and we'll go through a list of what those things could be. So the pros of this is it can be more cost effective. You can find really specific, specialized products out there that are really effective at doing what they do. And they're built for that. You can see each tool has its own specific purpose. So they're typically really renowned in the industry for what they do. The problem with this model is that there's a lack of integration. So you have to figure out a way for all these systems to talk to each other. You have to build those connections, which can be challenging. And it also means there's multiple platforms to learn. Again, with the all-in-one model, you're learning a pretty robust system, but just one system. With the a la carte model, you're potentially learning multiple systems. So let's look at, from a budgeting perspective, because that's what we're talking about, how this breaks down. So I'm taking these prices directly from these websites. Certainly with companies like HubSpot, there can be flexibility if you talk to a sales rep. But for the sake of apples to apples comparison here, if you go with a platform like HubSpot, which is kind of, again, your stereotypical all-in-one platform, I've set some limits at 10,000 contacts, and again, they're billing annually. You really have to coerce them to get down to monthly. You're going to spend about 15 grand a year for that platform. Whereas if you look at the a la carte model, where you're separating these things out, again, I'm using 10,000 contacts. In this case, billed monthly, so we have a little bit more flexibility. I've used a suite of a couple different platforms. So I've included ActiveCampaign for CRM, email marketing, and marketing automation. And it's actually a platform that's building out even more, more offerings. I'm using a tool called Zapier, which is a third-party connector to pass data from all these places to everything else. That when you're using a model like this, that's almost a necessity. I'm using a tool called Unbounce to build landing pages because I don't necessarily have a landing page builder. ActiveCampaign is working on this. I'm using a tool called Crazy Egg to cover A/B tests and heat mapping and things like that. And I've added a tool called Wistia in here to handle video hosting, video SEO optimization, things like that. And you can see that when I add all those up, and these are all the monthly rates, that comes out to about $7,500 a year. So it's about half the price. So I think this is where you really have to evaluate and decide, do I want a really robust platform? All my data is going to be in the same place. It does all the things I need and more, and pay a little bit more for that convenience and for that robust platform? Or do I want to work a little bit harder, build some more connections, and find and really pick and choose the platforms that I want to work with? Neither of these is the right or wrong answer. And oftentimes when we work with organizations, we work them through this process of trying to evaluate software and what is the best investment for them. So lastly, I want to talk about resources. And when I talk about this, this is how you're going to do all the stuff related to digital marketing. So we see a few different models. On one end, you have the organization that has an internal digital marketing team or marketing team that is handling essentially all the things that we've talked about today. On the other side, you have organizations that outsource everything, or better off, I should say, partner with an agency to really handle their digital marketing presence and work with them to focus on those business goals, whether it's lead generation, awareness, sales, etc. And then you have a very common model, which is you have an organization that has some resources in-house. They know they need outside expertise and support, and they partner with an agency for that. So let's walk through what these looks like. One of the considerations is certainly staffing. And for an organization, I think one of the things that has to be considered is, and has to be questioned is, do we have the right skill sets in-house to enact our digital marketing strategy? And that includes, again, strategy. Do you have a strategic marketing leader in-house? This would typically be everyone from a CMO to a director of marketing to a marketing manager, someone that's responsible for owning that. Oftentimes, when we work with business owners, they recognize that they're not the best person to oversee this marketing strategy or digital marketing strategy, but they also don't necessarily want to bring in an individual to do that in-house. And then you look at all the other skill sets that are required. Advertising, which could be PPC. You've got all these different platforms: Google Ads, Facebook Ads, Instagram, LinkedIn, the list goes on. Search engine optimization, content, social, design. So all of these different skill sets. Now, as an organization, you might not need every single one of these. So you might want to pick and choose which ones you really focus on. But do you have these in-house, and or can you hire for them? Or is it more effective and cost-effective to partner with an organization that has these skill sets in-house? And certainly, salary and benefits comes into the conversation here. The second consideration is training. So again, looking at those skill sets, do you internally have the resources to be able to train individuals on strategy, advertising, SEO, content, social, design, etc.? Or there are certainly lots of really great training platforms out there. Now, there's the expense of that training, right? Are you sending them to training? Are they doing online training, subscriptions, things like that? Or do you have internal expertise, mentors that can train people? Do you have documentation where new individuals can walk through documentation to understand the processes of your internal digital marketing strategy? And then software, finally. So again, we've talked about, do you invest in this all-in-one software internally? Do you have someone that can be a product owner for that and own when there are technical issues with it, train other people internally, help set up processes and workflows within that platform? Or do you go more of the a la carte model with some of these separate platforms? So you have to consider software expenses. But one of the benefits I would say is when you do partner with an agency, oftentimes agencies not only get cost advantageous pricing on some of these platforms, but speaking from our perspective, Aztec uses SEO platforms, analytics platforms, A/B testing, call tracking, all of this at the expense of Aztec. So we've already invested in these platforms and use them both on our clients' behalf, but also in collaboration with our clients. So that's another one of those considerations to make as well. So where we typically see the best outcomes, anecdotally from an agency, is where we have an organization that has an owner that is growth focused, that knows some of the things that they need to do, and they potentially have a marketing director that can guide that internal marketing strategy, and they collaborate with an agency like Aztec for strategy. So the marketing director and the strategic leader at the agency are having high-level strategic conversations to bridge the gap between the organizational strategic goals and what the best digital marketing strategy is to achieve those. And then certainly the support. And this would be enabling and enacting all of the specific projects and tasks and work that needs to be done, from content to email marketing campaigns to SEO to paid advertising campaigns, where it may not necessarily be advantageous for an organization to hire for each of those individual roles. So that's a pretty common model that we see in terms of what works out well with an agency collaboration. So when you're looking at your overall digital marketing budget, thinking about the next year, three of the biggest things to be thinking about and kind of line iteming out are, what is your anticipated ad spend going to be? Thinking that it's probably going to change and fluctuate throughout the year. What is your software investment and platform cost going to be, whether you invest all in one or a la carte or possibly collaborate with an agency? And what is the resource expense going to be as well? Are you going to have to hire people individually? Are you going to have to train people individually? Or do you want to partner with another organization for support here? So that's kind of the formula. So this is a very high level overview of how to set a digital marketing budget. I do want to open it up for any questions that anyone has. Certainly if you have questions about budgeting or any of the line items that I talked about in here, I'm happy to answer those. I'm going to give it a few minutes just to see if we have any questions here. In the meantime, I really do appreciate everyone sitting in on this webinar today. This will be recorded. We will be sending this out again. If you have any questions separately from me, one of the things that we do offer is a free 30-minute strategy session. So if you want to talk through your budget for next year with an individual that can talk strategically and help you understand and break out some of the different line item budget areas, we certainly offer that. I would encourage you to go to aztecweb.com/strategy. Really easy, just pick a time slot and set up a 30-minute strategy session. Highly encourage you to do that. And it doesn't look like we've had any questions come through, so I appreciate everyone's time today. Again, encourage you to schedule a 30-minute strategy session. If you have additional questions, more than happy to answer that. and appreciate everyone joining for today's webinar. Thanks.